All right, hi everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started without Becky. Hopefully she does show up. If she does, she'll kind of just jump in where we're at. And if she doesn't, we apologize. We're planning on having all 5 of them here so everybody can get to know all the candidates. So first and foremost, thank you to all of you for being here. This debate, or not a debate, sorry, this forum, is just so you guys can get to know the candidates, their platforms, decide whose values and ideas most align with yours, and then decide who you'd like to represent you on the Walled Lake School Board. So the questions were derived from a number of sources. We used the Michigan Education Association. Some came directly from WLCPR, Walled Lake Parental Rights Group, or Citizens for Parental Rights Group. And then a lot of them came from you guys, from the community. So the ones that came from the community, we condensed because they were kind of long. You guys had a lot of great questions. And we formatted them out for the candidates. They have a certain amount of time to answer each of them. And they've had some time to prepare. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our wonderful candidates. First up, we have Susie Crafton. Then we have Julie Fernandez, Shayna Levin, and we have Christy Tice. And then if Becky shows up, her name is Becky Spagnolo. We'll have her join on the end there.
And there's 2 more candidates there.
Oh, that's right. Christopher Titus, Nancy Van Leeuwen, they're currently sitting board members. So there's actually 7 candidates total. We were supposed to have 5 here today, but we have 4. So 2 current sitting and then 5 candidates running for a total of 3 seats.
And they were unable to attend.
Yep,
So they were invited.
Commitments, they were invited. Yep, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Okay, so we'll start with our first question, pretty general. You guys have 2 minutes to answer. And the question is, tell us who you are and tell us why you're running. Starting with Susie, and then really quick, I'll rotate. So Susie, you'll go first the first time, and then I'll start with Julie, and so everybody gets a chance to go first, last, and everything in between. Cool?
Cool.
All right, you're up.
All right. Hi, I am Susie Musbeck Crafton. I stress Musbeck because I have been a member, my family's been a member of the community for the last 50 years. I'm a parent of a 8th grader, and I had a recent graduate from Walled Lake Schools. There are only 2 candidates running that have children currently enrolled in Walled Lake Schools, and I am one of those 2 candidates. That is one of the main reasons I'm seeking your vote. Walled Lake has a beautiful offering to many, many of our students. And it's such a wonderful school district that I moved my family back here with my husband Clay 5 years ago because I wanted my oldest child to experience Walled Lake Western. It's beautiful diversity, it's incredible strong academics, and how it prepares its students for their chosen future. Career technology offerings, AP IB, performing arts, band, etc. These teachers are committed. They deserve to be supported. They deserve to be supported more than they are today. It's the hardest and most thankless job at this moment in time. And I'm committed to backing them as much as I can. They are experts in the field of child development, and we deserve to listen to them, trust them. They're our partners. I'm a parent, and I partner with my teachers. I'm also incredibly involved in our school district. I serve on the district's foundation, which raises additional funds for the district, provides mini grants to its teachers. I've been involved at the school and district level in PTA, including advocating for our students at the state and federal level to increase funding. And I know my stuff. This is my job. I love our schools. You should vote for me. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Julie Fernandez, and I first entered the Walled Lake School District in the 4th grade. My parents moved us here specifically 1 house over into the border of Walled Lake Schools because Walled Lake Schools had a reputation and was the best school in the district. It was the best school in Oakland County, and I believe it was in the top 10 in Michigan. And I think it would be absolutely fabulous to see Walled Lake schools have that reputation again, and we have a little bit of work to do there. I'm running because education has been a top priority for me in my life. My Walled Lake Public Schools education served me well. And you'll hear me talk in other questions about my qualifications for the role. And I've also set the bar for education very high for my own children. I've raised 3 children, chosen to raise them entirely in district, K through 12, all 3 of my own children, and a couple of years for a stepson. So there's a time to learn and earn and return, and I could not have done this while I was managing multiple teenagers with all of their activities. I'm newly almost at the end of the tunnel with my kids graduated from college, and now is a perfect time for me to jump back in and give back in a role that is ideally suited for me. So that's who I am and why I'm running.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. My name is Shayna Levin. Thank you for having me here today. I have been a resident of Commerce Township for 15 years. I'm married to my husband, Jeff. We have 12-year-old twins who are in the 7th grade. I'm a graduate of Michigan State University, and I own a small business here in Commerce Township. I'm running for the Walled Lake School Board because I have been frustrated with the direction and the results of the school district for the last couple of years, and I believe if you're going to complain, you need to be part of the solution. I am focused on 3 pillars: trust, transparency, and accountability. First, I want to bring trust back to our schools. I want parents to be able to trust that the material that's being taught to their children aligns with the curriculum. I want students to be able to trust that they're safe when they go to school every day. And I want teachers to be able to trust that the district has their back. Second, I want to greatly improve transparency at all levels, from parents being welcome to volunteer in classrooms and at events, to stakeholders being able to view and give feedback about budgets and curriculum, to having all Board of Education meetings, committee meetings being live streamed and recorded. Third, I want to improve accountability in our school district, from parents to students, teachers to administrators. I want student outcomes and stakeholder satisfaction with our district to improve, and I want to make sure when goals are set at all levels that those goals are achieved. I want to return Walled Lake Consolidated School District to being a top district in Michigan.
So I'm Christy Tice, and ever since I was young, I knew I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. And now I've spent the last 18 years working with children at various grade levels. I've also had the privilege to coach junior high and high school volleyball and basketball, which was a lot of fun. If you've never done anything like that, it's kind of my way to kind of stay in sports since I was no longer on a team myself, so it was a lot of fun. But in my experience working with kids over the last 18 years, I've learned that they rise to the expectations that we set for them. If I don't require much out of my students, they don't give me much. But when I require and set the standard a little bit higher, my students strive to reach the standard that I'm setting for them. And I believe that the bar needs to be raised for our students here in Walled Lake. When we take a look at history, we see generations in which students were held to a high standard, which resulted in very high levels of academic success. John Quincy Adams once said it was more common to find a comet in the United States than to find someone who couldn't read. And so we all know those are great statistics because we all know that comets are very, very rare. And I think that would be great if Walled Lake would one day be able to say the same thing. Prior to 1962, the United States was #1 in the world in literacy. As of 2016, the United States was not even in the top 100. So literacy rates are on the decline both locally and nationally, but I don't think they have to be. It is possible to close the gap as a district and as a nation, but I believe we have to raise the bar in order to see that change. I believe our students deserve a solid education where education is the primary focus, because as Lincoln once said, what you teach in the schoolhouse in one generation is going to become your government in the next. So I stepped up to run for school board because I want to be part of the decision-making process regarding how to best prepare our children for the future as adults, but also for the important task of becoming great leaders themselves for the future generations.
Thanks, Christy. All right, so we'll move on to the next question. Let's hold all applause till the end, just for the sake of time. We're good?
Becky's on her way. She's having car trouble.
Okay. All right, we'll catch her up. Okay, next question is, what qualifies you to be a good, I'm just gonna abbreviate, WLCSD Board of Education member, and this time around, we're gonna start with Julie.
Great, thanks for asking about qualifications. Because I think all of us want to do something for our kids, and what that means is, you know, there are people who, parents have their special role in doing things for our kids, and teachers and coaches and fundraisers, right? There are a lot of ways that we can help and serve our kids. And to me, what's important is to really focus in on the qualifications for this role, which is a board position. And boards are primarily responsible for things like policies and escalations, multiple large budgets, really large budgets, contracts for staff and for building and for services, and a whole boatload of HR issues like pay and benefits and compliance with law. And so the reason that I am greatly qualified for this role is because I have now spent more than 30 years as an HR advisor working with very large companies, lots of unionized organizations. 85% of our school funding ties directly to the staff development and HR activities and services in the schools. That's 85% of the spend, and that is entirely the area of my background and insights. And the second reason that I'm a great candidate for you is because I have 12 plus years of board experience. So everyone has their areas where they jump in and are volunteers. I'm not the concession stand lady and the PTA mom. Those are awful fits for me. But what is a great fit for me is sitting on a board. And I've done boards in charity organizations. I've done boards for credit unions and financial institutions, and I've done boards for public organizations, healthcare and other public-owned organizations. And so the board member role is unique, and that is uniquely the qualifications that I bring.
Thanks, Julie. Shannon, before you start, 1 minute to answer this question, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm qualified to be a good Walled Lake Board of Education member because I have the energy, the passion, the experience, and the healthy skepticism to be able to join the board and make positive changes. I have attended more Board of Education meetings than anyone up here, and I know how things work and how they don't. I've served on several boards myself, and I understand how to work together and how the process goes. I will combine my life and work experience with my passion for improving our district, and will work to make our district the best it can be for teachers, parents, staff, and the community, and students.
A board should be made up, I believe, of diversified members. We need people on the board who are experts in different fields so that together we can work to address the various needs in the district. So if the whole body were an eye, we wouldn't be able to hear. And if the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? So we need different parts that all work together. We need experts in finance, experts in education, experts in HR, etc. So I think I would be a good board member because I'm well acquainted with the educational side of things. I know the needs of teachers and I know the needs of students, and I could be a really good advocate for both of them. In addition to that, I'm not afraid to work hard and to do whatever needs to be done to improve the Walled Lake District.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks, ladies. On to question number 3.
Can I answer?
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Sorry.
I am profoundly qualified for this role. There are people in this room that can vouch for my integrity, my active listening, my ability to work across difference. That said, what those people that are my friends don't know is that I'm actually also an expert in school board governance. I led a project early in my career that trained large urban school board members how to solve massive problems in their districts. Miami, Dallas, Gwinnett County, which is like outside of Atlanta, 16 school districts were in my purview. And I trained and consulted them on how to do good governance, how to listen to the community, how to empower teachers, how to give proper autonomy once it's been earned by good results. I know governance. I'm ready to serve you. Thank you.
Thanks, Susie. Okay, next question. So question number 3, you guys have 1 minute to answer this question. The question is, what has been your experience, involvement, and commitment level within the Walled Lake School District? And we're gonna start with you, Sheena.
Thank you. I've been involved in Walled Lake schools since before my kids were in kindergarten, so over 8 years. It started with my friend Andy, who asked me to help with the fall fair at Commerce Elementary. I never saw myself as a school volunteer or a room mom, but as soon as I volunteered, I was hooked. Once my kids started at Commerce Elementary, I quickly became more involved, first as a helper, working on reading with the students, then as a PTA board member, and then as the PTA president. I also became involved in and served on the district PTA SA Council as the vice president, as well as where I've met a lot of people, as well as many of the current board members and central office staff. With my kids still being school aged, I have a lot at stake to make our district better, and I'm extremely committed to making sure our district provides the best education for its students and the most attractive school option for its residents.
Well, as a teacher and now principal, I spend a lot of my days inside a classroom, including lots of my evenings and weekends, and sometimes even lots of my summer break. Now, I know that's in my job description is to be in the classroom, but I spend so many hours that far exceed my contracted hours in a schoolroom. And I'm a huge advocate for academic excellence, and I believe students are capable of achieving. And so that's why I also can be found giving up a lot of my lunchtime and prep times, bringing students into my classroom who are struggling so that I can work in smaller groups with them to help them to be successful. But in addition to being in the classroom, I've also volunteered within my community, mentoring groups of teens for the past 8.5 years now.
In 2018, we moved here. There was a vacancy on the board, and the board was doing an appointment. I raised my hand then to be a school board member. I got feedback that I was a very strong candidate. I didn't get the job, the unpaid job. The feedback was, you need to pay your dues in the district. You need to get involved. And I said, okay, you tell Susie Crafton she needs to get involved. I'll show you involved. So PTA unit level, PTA district level. I serve on the board of the Michigan PTA as the VP of Programs and Services. I serve on the board of the Foundation for Excellence. I'm probably one of the most committed residents to Walled Lake Schools that you can find.
Thank you, Susie. Great. Well, so you heard me say that I've been in the district since the 4th grade. So that was well before the 2000s, I hate to say. And you also heard me say that I raised my own kids and chose a Walled Lake Schools public education for them. And they're only somewhat recently graduated. You'll hear a lot of noise, I think, about whether you have kids in the district currently or not. Only one of our school board members presently today does have kids in the district, but I would like to tell you that I have 50 years of skin in the game, 50 academic school years of skin in the game, between my own 9 years before graduating, and then 3 kids times all 13 K through 12 grades, so kids at every single level. And kids that were very involved in everything from the band to the to school government to musicals and all of the wonderful programs that Susie mentioned earlier have all been a very active part of my life. And so for me, that should speak a lot of skin in the game when it comes to Walled Lake Schools. This is our home, our family, and our community, and whether our kids are yet to come or just coming out the other side, what we want are the best schools possible for Walled Lake.
Thanks, Julie. All right, next question. So 1 minute for this question as well. And the question is, if there were to be another emergency, such as COVID, what is the board's role and what would you do the same or different from the previous COVID response? And we're gonna go ahead and start with Christy.
Well, God forbid we ever have a repeat of anything like COVID. However, should we ever experience anything like it again, I believe it's the board's responsibility to step up and do whatever possible to keep our kids safe while also keeping them in school. The COVID gap that was created thanks to closing schools is something that our students and staff will be dealing with for quite some time. The cure should never be more costly than the problem. And the shutdown and closing schools has cost us far more than COVID itself. So I think the board needs to work really hard to find a solution that will keep our kids in school.
Hypotheticals are useless. Good governance, it deals with the facts in the moment and makes the best choice they can based on the facts in the moment. Hindsight can inform your future, but it is not useful to talk about hypotheticals. So, I know this group wants me to commit to something, and I am not going to, because the worst thing you can do in governance is tie the hands of a future board.
Thanks, Susie. Great, thanks. So I want to focus on the board role specifically, as I think that was the essence of the question to me. First, as a board member, our first duty always is compliance with law. And so, you know, whatever the laws are, we have a responsibility to comply to law, and that is something that we should take very seriously as a board. We also can influence the activities through clear and consistent policies. And I think that's one area where, you know, in various kind of politically charged topics, we have some issues and some work that we can do. And thirdly, the board deals with escalations and exceptions. So as soon as, you know, the initial reaction and the initial period of emergency are over, there began a lot of discussion in the community. And that point in time, I think maybe we missed an opportunity to do more with the escalations and the things that we were hearing from kids, from teachers, from the community. We all want safety first, and so everybody wants to make sure that the kids are safe. Fear and politics eat their way not only into our boards, but to our entire society, and led folks to make broad declarations of absolutes, and that was not helpful, I think, to anyone. And just, I guess, for the record, I am my own leaning, not political. This is a non-political role, is for choice. And so I think it's important that, you know, as long as we're complying with law and we're doing the right things, you know, that there's an element of discretion, that we're all adults and want the best for our kids. Thanks, Julie.
So I think the entire world learned a lot from the pandemic. I think the biggest lesson is that the solution can't be worse than the problem. Instead of considering the harm that the response was causing, unfortunately in Walled Lake, we continued to follow guidance that was being disproved daily. If we were faced with this again, I would start by asking questions and then determine the route that was best. I realized that the district claims to have not had a lot of say in the matter, that it was up to the health department, but I also know that through a FOIA request, the district asked the health department to impose many of the draconian rules that it chose to follow. As a board member, I would be out there asking questions and fighting for students and parent rights, and demanding that policymakers support their responses with facts. It always struck me as odd that school and district leaders, people who claim to care about kids, never spoke up in support of those kids. There isn't a teacher or administrator who could look me in the eye and tell me things like virtual learning and masking didn't hurt our kids. They knew it, I knew it, but I was the one out there speaking up, not them. I would be out there speaking out again in a heartbeat if I needed to.
Thank you, Shana. Okay, on to the next question. For the next question, you also have 1 minute to answer.
Am I up first?
You are up first.
Okay,
yeah, I see.
cool. I kind of lost track.
Yeah. I know, when you asked me, I was like, it's you. Okay. All right, next question. Do you see district education gaps, such as literacy, math, etc.? If so, what will you do to improve these problems? 1 minute, Susie.
So I think we're doing a really, really good job with tracking student performance data, setting goals, being clear about literacy and numeracy goals at the elementary level through about 8th grade performance. We use a tool called iReady, and you get data that shows that your student is growing and progressing. When we get to the upper grades, that transparency kind of falls apart. And so we really need to focus on how we are supporting our students at the middle school and high school level on academic performance. I'm actually very, very committed to seeing our student performance data and our student access disaggregated by race, ethnicity, gender, and socioeconomic status, because I believe that we have an access problem at the AP, IB, and career tech levels, but no one's ever showed the data, so that's just my guess right now. We need to make sure we're serving every child and preparing them for their chosen future.
Great, so I definitely feel that closing the learning gaps is the most important topic at issue this year. Not only because we've continued to slide since last year, but the slide has been a long slide for over a decade. And what we're seeing is a 38% gap in kids able to read within a grade level of their learning. So 4 in 10 kids is more than a particular portion or part of the population. This is a broadly recognized issue where our literacy and our math scores and the basics just are not, are declining, really. And we can't measure the entire effect of COVID because we paused and halted some testing for fear of the fact that it might show worse results. Well, everyone knew that the results were going to be worse. We had an absolute crisis in our learning system. My focus is on the basics: reading, writing, math, history, science, language arts, career tech, financial literacy, right? The things that kids need to go to school and get an education for. And as part of the board, I think we sort some of this out by looking at curriculum review and transparency and making sure that that people have access to what are we teaching in the schools, and then have our educators and our professionals really focused on teaching what is in the curriculum.
So yes, I do see gaps. Based on the 21-22 MSTEP data, only 48% of students in Walled Lake are either proficient or advanced in math, and only 56% of Walled Lake third graders are proficient or advanced in ELA. You might say this is better than some neighboring districts, but what about the other 44% or 52% of students who aren't proficient? Just being better than someone else isn't enough for these kids. We need to be doing better and setting the expectations higher. We need to have an increased focus on the basics at the early elementary levels. Things like phonics and reading and early math skills are critical to building a strong foundation. I heard from one teacher recently who told me that students in Walled Lake who fall too far behind get left there because it's too much ground to make up and the system isn't designed to help that student. We need to make sure no student is left behind. I have been to many board meetings where data is presented by central office staff, and very rarely do current board members ask any questions. It's impossible to believe that every board member just understands everything the minute they're told data. It takes time to understand the details, and it takes details to understand if the right data is even being presented. Yet none of them ask any questions. I think it's important to ask questions. Board members don't need to be furious, but they should always be curious.
So I also believe that there are both literacy and math gaps in our district. And I won't repeat the percentages as those have already been shared. But in order to bridge these gaps, I believe we first need to evaluate curriculum to determine its effectiveness. And I think that reading curriculums need to consist of a strong phonics component. And if that's found to be lacking in the curriculum, I would be an advocate for getting that implemented, because I believe that's a foundation for reading, and that would help to bridge that gap. I also think providing tutoring services and just special services within the schools for those struggling students could also be a helpful tool in helping to bridge that gap. But I believe that our focus really needs to be on those 3 R's: the reading, the writing, the arithmetic. But especially I think reading is just really one of the big keys, because if you can't read, you're not going to be able to do your story problems in math. And if you can't read, you're not going to be able to take your history book and learn about history. So we really need to work on making that a focus.
Thanks, Christy. Hey, Becky. Thanks for
Hey,
joining us.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Don't worry. Before you dive in, I want to
Yes.
give you a chance to tell everybody who you are
Okay.
and why you're running.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I apologize profusely to everyone. Sorry I had car trouble and had to fly out a neighbor to come bring me today. Let me find my paper here. Well, my name is Becky Spagnolo. I am a mother of 2 small children in the district. One is 6 years old, he'll be 7 tomorrow, and a 4-year-old as well, he'll be in kindergarten next year. I am a PTA member. I am an active volunteer within our classrooms. I am also a former volunteer teacher aide and a former police officer. My family and I moved to this area 5 years ago. We meticulously chose Walled Lake to be our schools out of all the other districts in the area, not only because they were highly rated, but because they came highly recommended to everyone we spoke with. Sorry, a little out of sorts here, everybody. Let's see. Sorry.
Take your time, no pressure.
All right, so that is just a little about me. I am very dedicated to our schools. My children will be here for the next 14 years. That gives me a really big stake in this. and I am running for school board to put myself out there and be a willing person who will both serve and protect the children and the teachers within our district.
Thanks,
That's it.
Becky. So, and then I'm gonna go ahead and give you the question that they just answered as well, so we'll catch you up there.
All right.
So the question was, do you see district education gaps, such as in literacy, math, etc.?
Okay.
And if so, what will you do to improve these problems?
Alright. So let me just start by saying that Walled Lake does have a 93% graduation rate. I think someone's probably already said these statistics, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyways. Walled Lake is ranked in the top 20% for overall testing scores. We have a 61% for reading and language proficiency and 65 for math proficiency, which is also within the top 10% of the state. I realize that those last two numbers still seem a little low. We have to keep in mind that that is at least 16% higher than the state average. I think there is a reason to be proud of our staff and our students. However, education is not a one-size-fits-all, and test scores are not the best representation of a student's ability. Too often our teachers are pressured to teach to the test, and that takes away from resources and a curriculum that is equitable and gives students an individual attention that they need to succeed. This creates gaps. My solution would be to consult with the teachers and administration and make it a priority to give them support that they feel they need to close these gaps. Furthermore, I would encourage parents to get involved with their children, talk to the teacher, ask how you can help. I know that literacy is a big concern right now, and that's true. Without literacy, you cannot succeed in education. So even as not a board member, I can sit in this room and do something about that right now. I can appeal to all of you and echo that all of our teachers in our entire district tell the parents almost every year, read with your children 20 minutes a day. Literacy starts at home, at birth, before the children even get to school.
Thanks, Becky.
Right.
See, you did great.
Thank you.
All right, next question. You wonderful ladies will get 2 minutes to answer. And we started with Susie the last time, so we'll start with Julie this time around, okay? So the question is, how do you best recommend we support our students of all races, genders, religions, and education levels, including full access for students with disabilities and those who choose to directly enter the workforce after high school, for example, vocational training or skilled trades?
Yep, great. I think that's super important. And I think at the base, everyone who has kids or nieces or nephews or family, wants to see a fair playing field, and they want to see everyone have access to education at whatever level or capability they have to absorb that. I also think that means some equal opportunities, but not necessarily extra opportunities. I think that we've heard some others cite that the schools are really well oriented toward kind of the middle, the average child, right? And we have a large population of special needs children, 13% or so of special needs children. And so there's activities and things that are focused there. I'm not entirely sure we have the same handle on stats or activities and focus on our advanced placement kids on the other end. Haven't been able to get or find a stat or figure that would tell us about the advanced learners who also need to have programs and things that keep them challenged and engaged. And then I would say for the kind of the bulk of our students that are just keeping up with their current grade levels, we do need an awful lot more career tech, and not everyone is channeled directly into a college program. My husband's a lifelong tradesman, and we don't have enough trades and industry folks coming out of our system, so I'm a huge advocate of figuring out what is the right balance and what can we do even before our kids hit OCC to channel and support kids that are more mechanical in nature, mechanically inclined, and are looking for different types of opportunities and life skills. It's absolutely shameful that our kids come out of school and they don't have a single foggy idea how to balance a checkbook or how to, what the concept of auto insurance is, and so we launch them into the world without enough financial literacy. And so those types of learnings, I think, are well aligned to what our academic environment should be teaching and supporting all of our kids with.
I think all students need to be supported equally, regardless of race, gender, religion, or education level. I have spoken to several members of the special needs community who have shared with me that the district can do a much better job providing access for students with disabilities. For example, if providing a student with transportation to attend a different school is what that student needs to have access to the right program, then the district needs to find a way to make that happen. If a special needs student's class schedule isn't meeting his needs, it needs to be changed without the parent needing to reach out to 4 different levels of administration. The needs of all students with disabilities should be reviewed and addressed regularly and should be handled with as much care and emphasis as students without disabilities. And parents should be given regular opportunities to provide feedback and address concerns at any level. Finally, there should be much more support given to an emphasis made on career and technical education. I recently heard a statistic at a board meeting I attended that was shocking. Something like only 47 kids from one high school are participating in OSTC. That seems crazy to me. We have access to an amazing program, but it's not being utilized. We need to find out why, and we need to promote it. Not everyone is going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, and even if they are, there's ways for those students to get hands-on learning experience, and it's just not being promoted. We need to fix that. Our students in our community deserve better, and frankly, our future depends on it.
So the best way I think to support all students is first provide them with a quality education and give them the solid foundation on which to build so that they can be successful in whatever field that they choose, and whether that means going to a 4-year school or a trade school. Our students are all created equal, and so as such, I believe that they should all have equal rights, but not extra rights. I believe that all students deserve access to the resources that meet their individual needs. All living things, plants, they all need some essential elements to grow: water, sunlight. But then they also require some unique needs to grow. And so I think our students are the same. They have some of the same basic needs, but in order to really flourish, they all have some specific unique needs that need to be met. The motto here in the Walled Lake District is "Every child, every day." And so that indicates that the district needs to be doing whatever it takes to meet those individual unique needs that these students have so that they can flourish. And so I intend, if I become a board member, to help make sure that that happens in our district.
Public schools need to both represent and protect all their students. For one thing, it is required by civil rights regulations, like federal Title IX for one example. It's also just morally the right thing to do. As a board member, it would be my job to ensure that policies are in place in the future, not obscuring students based on race, gender, sexuality, or orientation. I would also focus on approving inclusive and equitable curriculum. As I've said before, education is not a one-size-fits-all, especially when students and their families are in need of extra services. I'm going to get very personal here because I know just how rough it is for a family to fight for those services. I did not get to mention this earlier, but I had an IEP in high school. I am dyslexic. I have short-term memory problems. All this stuff as a child was very difficult to deal with. I remember countless evenings crying over my reading homework. I felt humiliated and unintelligent in the classroom, and I prayed my teachers would never call on me. In the process, my parents were shouting into the void, begging for someone to help me. But because I wasn't failing everything, I was not getting the services that I needed. It took them completely backing off and not helping me whatsoever for a full month at a new school before I got the help that I needed. I don't think any parent should have to watch their child fare or fight that hard to get what they need. We need a way that parents can easily communicate at all levels with their teachers, administration, to the board to get the services that their children need without having to fight so hard for it. And as far as the traditional path of heading straight into a 4-year university is not for everyone, and this stigma that it has to be needs to go away. We need to tell these children it's okay not to want to go to college. College was not in the card for my family. We could not afford it, and I didn't want to be buried under student loans. So right after high school, I went to working full-time, as well as attending community college classes on nights and evenings. That is a rough way to spend your 20s. I wish we'd had some of the programs that Wall Lake has here, vocational training and work-based learning. And I agree, well, that's fantastic. They are being underutilized, and there need to be more so more children can be involved with it.
The students of today are our leaders of tomorrow, and they have to be prepared for an unknown reality. The world has been changing so rapidly, even pre-COVID, right? The ability to have interpersonal skills, the ability to work across difference, the ability to celebrate diversity, to be an active citizen in our country, these are the qualities that we need to prepare our children with by the time they leave high school. All children. So I've already talked about the need to disaggregate data based on race, income, ethnicity, religion, etc. That's to just make sure get a baseline of how we're serving our community. I don't know how we're doing in all of our subpopulations, which is why I keep stressing we've got to present our data in a way that we can tell where those gaps are. I also want to just set the record straight a little bit on the Walled Lake services for gifted students. I have firsthand knowledge that we are doing a top-notch job. My child goes to 9th grade math in 8th grade, and the district buses my child to the high school, back to the middle school, and provides that extra support because my child is very, very strong in math. Is there an opportunity to provide those, think creatively about how to serve all students in that way? Absolutely. It shouldn't just be for the gifted kids that get to go to 9th grade when they're in 8th grade. A kid who's struggling should also be able to have the support of a teacher that is in an earlier grade if they have a specific skill gap. So we do have a great system. It needs to be applied more equitably and consistently across all populations. I also want to say on the career tech side, this is mom bragging, sorry. My student that just graduated did a 2-year CAD and drafting curriculum for free, offered by Walled Lake Western, that prepared him to get a scholarship to go to Ohio State for sustainable architecture. So we're doing great work. We just need to get it out there to everybody.
Great, thanks, Susie.
Yep.
Thanks, ladies, great answers. Okay, next question up is, you guys get 2 minutes to answer this one. A major emphasis within education includes topics such as diversity, social emotional learning, and equity. What is your view on these priorities within the district, starting with Sheena?
So on the surface, these things, SEL, DEI, they sound great. Who wouldn't want diversity in schools or mental health support for kids? I think these things are important. The challenge becomes when these things turn into more than what they sound. Instead of DEI really being about diversity or inclusion, it can quickly turn into reverse racism or accusations of privilege. And it turns into a fight for equal outcomes when it should be about equal opportunity. We aren't helping any students by lowering expectations or making the focus on race or gender. We should be fighting for each student to have the same opportunity to succeed. Students aren't born racist and don't even consider that they are different from anyone until we make it a thing when they enter kindergarten. I think schools should focus on academic education and teaching kids to be good humans. And I support schools supporting mental health, but this can also be a slippery slope. When a wedge starts to be driven between parents and their children because schools want to step in and help, bad things can happen. Parents know what's best for their children, and it's not up to schools to interfere or for teachers to try to impose their own values on students. I'm not saying this is happening in Walled Lake schools, at least not on a large scale. But the unfortunate truth is that the political landscape and overall environment of our country is ripe for allowing this to happen, and I want to make sure our district's focus remains on education.
So I believe that schools need to stick to the approved curriculum. And if a topic isn't covered in the curriculum, we should not be prioritizing it. What we do need to work at prioritizing above anything else is the reading, the writing, the arithmetic. And we see the importance of making sure our priorities are in the right order when we take a look at the gaps. For instance, the literacy gap that we have here. And you know, my thought is that maybe these percents are so high, these gaps are so big, because we have lost maybe a little bit of our focus in thinking we need to bring in all of these other things that eat into the academic part of the day. They start to infiltrate the classrooms when they're not part of the curriculum, and we need to stick to what is the curriculum.
I firmly believe that diversity, social emotional learning, and equity need just as much emphasis put on them as our schools as academic teaching should. What is wonderful is that it can be presented side by side. The Michigan Department of Education has a great guide on social emotional learning competencies everyone should read. The gist of it is that SEL teaches at age appropriate levels the management of emotions, the care and empathy for others, responsibility and good decision making. In early elementary levels, this could look like focusing on whole school themes of kindness and giving, and maybe helping them take a deep breath and navigate playground squabbles. As you get older, it can be as simply put as into using a diverse population for a story problem in math, or giving our middle schoolers and high schoolers a book to read that may present ideas that they are unfamiliar with, but will present and be presented with and have to deal with in the real world. Because you see, one of the beautiful things about public education that you will not find in most private or charter schools is it takes students from all walks of life and puts them under one roof to learn not only together, but from each other. An earlier question asked about preparing those who choose to enter the workforce right away. Social emotional learning is a fantastic addition to the programs we already have in place. Real life skills that are essential for the rest of their lives, and I think that's something we all would actually want for our children.
Said plainly, this is where I differ from the values of the Walled Lake Citizens for Parental Rights. I believe 100% that Walled Lake's diversity makes it strong, and it must be celebrated. This is the real world we live in, and we need to prepare our students to work across difference, embrace diverse perspective, and be leaders. If we don't acknowledge it and we wait only for parents to address real world issues, they will only address those issues through their one lens. And that isn't enough for the world we live in today. It's just not. On the social emotional learning side, guys, this is a hard world to live in right now. Our kids are struggling. Really, really struggling. Depression rates for teenage girls is off the charts. The idea that we're not going to fund social emotional learning in schools is literally the reason I'm running, because no one is going to take this stuff away from our kids, period.
So on this topic, I think when we hire teaching professionals and folks that are fabulous teachers, and we celebrate and reward and encourage them to do their job, we hire a teacher to teach math, or to teach reading, or to teach history, or to teach science. And so those are the core skills and the core competencies that we're asking them to teach in the classroom. I work in HR, and I can tell you, because HR is the place where we put designated roles focused on DEI and SEL and some of these other things, that there is throughout society at the adult level a conscientious push of training and materials to be sure that everyone is embracing diversity and is thinking about emotional well-being, as if we aren't already. And I think the vast majority of parents are capable of working with their kids to think about things from different lenses, And I also believe that adults teach these things to children in the context of a situation. So fair play and equal opportunity, you know, those were things that the playground, you know, the playground ladies, you know, would watch over and make sure that when they saw a situation that had some of these moral or inequitable instances in it, an adult would set that right. And I don't know at what point in time we stepped away from adults being able to see those things, interpret them, and set them right, and teach and coach children to having to embed and incorporate that into the curriculum. And I do feel like sometimes it's a distraction. It's a distraction from the learning, and I believe that some of our literacy and other numbers reflect the fact that we're trying to embed things all over the place.
Sure. Thanks, ladies. Okay, next question. For the next question, you will also have 2 minutes to answer. And the question is as follows. Given that sex education is an important and sensitive area of teaching, including family, religious, and personal preferences, what do you believe should be the role of the Board of the Education and the district? And we're going to start with Christy.
Well, there are laws on the books that have to do with sex education and what schools can and can't do when it comes to that. And so the board's responsibility is to, first of all, make sure that they know what those laws are, and then second, to ensure that the law or that the rules and policies within the school are lined up with the laws that are in place. So parents should be given the right to opt out of any kind of sex-related lectures and that goes on in the schools. But in order to be able to opt out, they first have to be made aware of the content that is going to be presented to their child. And so there needs to be transparency. Parents deserve that transparency, and it's up to the school to provide that transparency, and it's up to the board to make sure that that is happening. And so the board should be holding the teachers and the staff accountable to provide all of that, because it's the parents that should be able to decide what is in the best interest of their child, and whether they want their child to participate in or be able to opt out of certain things.
Okay. The board's role when it comes to sex education is the same for any other curriculum. The board does not make the curriculum. The development of sex curriculum in the state of Michigan is actually a little tricky. Michigan does not require sex education to be taught in schools. However, most of Michigan districts choose to do so. And when they do so, they are then required to follow some certain steps, require certain things set by the state. In our district, this responsibility of making sex education curriculum falls to the superintendent, a team of qualified administration, teachers, as well as the reproductive health and advisory board. And there are parents on that board. I want to one of the group of individuals. Sorry, I lost my place here. So there are things in place to make the curriculum. It is the board's responsibility, once we have that curriculum, to go ahead and make sure it follows the required regulations, the required requirements. And the requirements are that sex education be founded upon research, is age appropriate, and follows guidelines given by the state. Now, as a parent and prospective board member, I would hope to encourage that curriculum presented to the board would include respecting your own body, understanding puberty as a healthy part of growing up, access to addresses the struggles of mental health can have on mental health that comes with puberty, and respecting others' bodies and the importance of consent. And yes, it is my belief that it should also include age-appropriate and medically sound LGBTQIA+ information as well. Not including this would be discrimination and exclusion of some of our students in the district, and that cannot happen. We accept that our students are human beings, joined together in education, seeking community awareness and support. Now, I understand this does not fall in line with the beliefs of many people here, and that's okay, because our district does have the option to opt out, and they are already required to let parents know ahead of time.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you.
What she said. Anyway. So I'm gonna take this a slightly different way. My mom was a teacher for 36 years. She taught 6th grade. 6th grade is when you teach sex ed for the first time, at least in her district in Livonia. And I know my mother's heart. I know that she was a master of the curriculum. She was a master at building trust with her students so that she would be able to communicate sensitive topics like changing body, puberty, consent, etc., at the age-appropriate levels. She also actively engaged with the parents when students were having a struggle. We know we have great teachers in Walled Lake schools, and I am confident that they are approaching sex education in a similar way. I will stress that we do have systems to opt out. I will also stress that we live in a really complicated world right now where consequences to reproductive choices are in threat. So we better know what consent looks like and how the body works if we're going to prepare children for their chosen future. That's it.
So from a board member perspective, I would again say our primary duty is compliance with law, right? That's really the most important thing. And there are laws on Michigan books around the Sex Education Advisory Board. There is an advisory board. However, whether those policies and practices are being followed as they're supposed to, and whether or not there are actual content and materials that are communicated in a way that a parent could opt out, those are the topics that are controversial in our society today, and they shouldn't be controversial. It should be very clear to Walled Lake schools. It shouldn't be that hard to say, you know, here's content, here's what the Sex Education Advisory Board made up of parents and clergy and teachers, here's what that board has deemed is the content and when and at what age. Yes, age appropriate content that a parent can opt out to. I believe that because of some of the circumstances that we're hearing brought forth in the community, I'm not entirely sure that we're following our own governance and our own practices in that area. And so I hope to find out that we are. I think there are plenty of vehicles available for sex education to be introduced to curriculum at specific points and times and places in age-appropriate fashion. But we need to follow those processes so that parents not only know when and what that is, but that they can exercise their right to opt out, which everyone has recognized is something that a parent can and should be able to do. So bring it on, but let's follow a governance and a process that makes sense.
So this question assumes that sex education is an important area of teaching, and I disagree. The important areas of teaching are things like reading, writing, math, and science. Topics like physical health, nutrition, and disease prevention, they have a place too. But teaching about sex and sexual preference and gender identity and overall values surrounding these topics are best left to families. With that said, there are very specific laws that exist in our state that govern exactly what and exactly when reproductive health can and should be taught. One role of a school board is to make sure that the school district is compliant with laws, and our district currently is not compliant with these laws. If I'm elected, I'll make sure that the policies and procedures that we have are reviewed, and I will make sure that the district becomes and stays compliant.
Great, thanks, Shana. Okay, I know you guys are itching to chime in and ask questions. Just due to some time constraints, we've done it so that when we're all done with questions here, there will be 35 minutes after they're done for networking, and you can actually personally ask them any questions that you'd like when we get to that. Okay, so next question. You ladies will have 1 minute to answer this question, and it goes as follows. Please describe your vision on what the work dynamic should be between the board, the administration, and the staff and teachers. How will they best function together? Starting with you, Becky.
Trust, respect, and collaboration. These are the three things everyone who just listed will need for a successful school district. The board needs to trust their teachers and administration in the district to do their jobs. We have hired them and put them in our classrooms, not trust them. The board does not need to have their fingers in their noses in every little dispute going on inside the classroom. In turn, we also need to trust the superintendent that that the school board has hired to do a good job. And if we don't trust them, then something else does need to be done. Respect is going to be huge. We need to remember that when there are going to be disagreements, because let's be honest, no one is ever going to agree. Not everyone all at once anyways. We need to respect the fact and keep in mind that everyone here, the teachers, the administration, the board members, superintendent, we all have one thing in common, and that's we believe we have the students' best interest at heart. If you can respect everyone else's views and work together and put differences aside for the betterment of the kids, we will be okay. The second one is collaboration. You can't have collaboration without respect and without trust. If you can trust everyone in the room to do their job and to get it done, you will be able to collaborate and come up with fantastic policies, good curriculum, equity that involves all the students. And I think that would be the best way to have a functional and idealistic school board.
Good governance is the job of the school board. We set vision, mission, strategic plan, and a policy framework. We hire the superintendent, we hold the superintendent accountable. Everything else is management. It is not the job of the school board to build relationships directly with teachers or with management in order to micromanage the outcomes and the happenings at the school level. The minute board members start doing that, it erodes the trust and the clarity of management systems that's in place set by management. I've watched it happen in districts across the country. School board members need to stay what we call in governance above the line. Management does the work below the line. The group that's missing from the list of stakeholders in the question is the community. 60% of the Walled Lake community does not have kids in the district right now. We need, as Walled Lake school board members, to be very active and visible, listening to our constituents in the community to ensure that our schools are serving the community's needs.
I couldn't agree more with Susie about the governance. And I do think that part of where the community sits is we, as school board members or aspiring school board members, are elected and accountable by the community to do this oversight role that Susie describes, whether you call it management or operations. It's absolutely truth that the school board is not meant to get involved in individual items until or unless they're escalated to a certain point or there are a number of them, and so then it becomes problematic. And even so, I sure hope that the superintendent is bringing those to us and not and that it doesn't have to filter through the community, which is something that we're hearing in the school board meetings today. The other thing that I think is really important is I think that the board needs to run also by committee. So it's very typical for any board to have committees that focus on policy. We have one of those. That focus on HR, that focus on finances in a district that is $7 million projected on, over budget. And so operating by committee not only brings focus to certain key elements in the district, but it also allows there to be open meetings and subjects where the community can come and listen in or participate to topics that are important to them, and that's something that's lacking today.
So I think that the board should set the vision for the district and then get out of the way while the administration, teachers, and staff bring that vision to life. I think teachers are asked to do too much that doesn't involve actually teaching students, things like arbitrary goal setting and professional development that's not relevant to actual education. I would work with and challenge administrators to review their own goals and assess whether the non-teaching work they're asking teachers to do is really creating a benefit or if it's wasting time. As a board member, I would ask lots of questions and seek to understand. I would challenge the status quo, and I would spend time in schools and in the community to make sure voices of all stakeholders are heard. So to get back to the question, I think each piece of the puzzle has its own role, and the best way to function together is to stick to their roles, collaborate, and give each role space to flourish. Then check in to make sure the vision is coming to life and course correct as needed.
So each one of these things mentioned, the board, the administration, staff, teachers, they all have a different role to play, as was already mentioned. I think when you're looking at bringing all of them together and working together, the one word that came to my mind was unity. And so I think that that's the way anything functions best. That's the way a family functions best. That's the way my classroom functions best. And I think when we bring all these different pieces of the puzzle together, they function best when they're unified. It was already mentioned too how these people, they don't have to agree on everything. You're not going to agree on everything. We all have different worldviews and a different lens through which we look at things, but there is a common goal, or there should be a common goal in mind, and that's the success of the children in our district. And so I think we just really need to come together and be unified, and I think we need to really set politics aside, especially the board as it is a nonpartisan position, and really focus on what's in the best interest so that we can work together to keep the right priorities in our classrooms.
Great, thanks ladies. Okay, for the next question, you will also get 1 minute. Susie, you actually already answered some of it. So the question is, please describe your vision on what the work dynamic should be between the board and the parents. How will they best function together? Susie.
It was 1 minute?
1 minute.
Okay. So I get the absolute privilege of working with parents in public school settings through my work with PTA and specifically at the state level PTA. And I would see my role as a board member in a very similar way. We work together, we listen, we communicate. I'm accessible often, transparent on challenges and successes. And the difference in an elected board seat is that you're required by law to have that transparency. I choose to have that transparency just as a leader. So I'm a parent volunteer, and Jackie, who's smiling at me right now, can say, I will actively tell you when something's not going right or when we've worked together to make something really great happen. That's my leadership style in general. The board is required to do its business in the public, in an open meeting. And therefore, there's even more transparency that will be expected with parents and the Board of Education. My door is always open. I'm a phone call or a text away, and I want to hear the celebrations and the areas we've got to fix. I know there's some out there, and if I'm elected, we will work together to get things done.
Thanks. I also feel it's important to get feedback from parents so that we can, in serving on the board, have the right pulse of parents and those who aren't parents, those who are in the community that we serve and are looking for workers that come out of our school and education system. I'm not sure that I believe that the transparency is there today, and I think it should be. I think that we should be approachable and we should be involved and in front of and in understanding what parents want. But I also think that that if we don't have committees as a school board, and so we don't have open meetings, and there's little conversation in the public eye at the school board meetings or at Open Meetings Act, then it can't possibly be transparent, or there can't possibly be no discussion happening for any of the topics that are coming up for approval at the board meetings. So I think we have a long way to go in transparency. Hopefully you hear that we all want to be approachable and that we all want to understand and reflect the things that are important to the community and to the parents. But if we can't also then bring that into a transparent interaction with the board, then we will have failed. And I think that's something that ultimately I'm interested in bringing forward, and I imagine you'll hear the same thing from others.
So I think sometimes parents don't know where to go with their concerns, which leads them to try to connect with board members about their concerns. I think when concerns are brought to a board's attention or the board's attention, parents need to know that the board heard them and what will be done. The right people need to be added to an email thread or to a conversation, and there needs to be follow-up among the board. Right now, you can email people on the board and never hear anything back. and that's a problem. Parents shouldn't feel like they're speaking into a black hole. I realize, during public comment, there's Robert's Rules of Order, and public comment can't be responded to, but I've witnessed many times where there have been very concerned parents who bring up a concern and nothing ever happens, not even an acknowledgement that says, I hear you, I can't respond to you right now, but see me after the meeting. Now that has improved. There has been a culture shift since the departure of Mr. Gutman, where there is more transparency with the board. When there are questions, board members are now coming up to people after meetings to talk about things. And that is exactly the kind of interaction, collaboration, transparency that we have been begging for years. And so I'm hoping with our new superintendent, that same level of improved transparency will continue, and that there will be some stronger definition about what is the role of a board, what is the role of a superintendent, but that they can work together. So when a parent does maybe misplace their concern and talk to the wrong person, the board and the superintendent can work together to help that parent through whatever their concern is. So I think that we want to make sure that the lines are clear and that the board is staying in their lane and letting the administrators do the things that they need to do. But I also think it's okay to be human and to talk to parents and simply say, hey, I hear your concern. I'm going to have so-and-so deal with this, and I'm going to follow up and make sure that it got handled in a way that was necessary and appropriate for you.
So if I were on the board, I would want to foster a friendly working relationship with the parents within the community. And I believe the best way to do that is through transparency. And actually that's something that as a teacher, I already practice every day. The students that are in my classroom, nobody knows them better than the parents. Nobody loves them more than the parents. Nobody wants them to succeed more than the parents. And so as a teacher, I work really hard to communicate really well with my parents, to keep them updated with whatever is going on in the classroom. And I think that should be the same with the board and parents. There needs to be transparency so that parents are aware of what's going on in the classroom. And parents should have a voice. If they have a concern, they should be free to be able to bring that to the board. And if I were on the board, I would listen to those parents. When a concern gets brought up, I would do the research on that as needed, and I would provide the feedback to the parents in the community that I would be serving in.
I would echo everyone else here is also saying transparency is key. Like I said, I had parents who struggled to find these services, and they did have to eventually go to the board for that. And I want parents to be comfortable doing that with me as a board member. I will listen, I am concerned, I am a human, I am an adult, I am a parent as well. I have a strange idea no one else here has probably brought up. As far as a young parent trying to get to a board meeting is very hard. Childcare is always one of my main concerns. As a board member, I would like to push to actually have childcare available at meetings. We just had it at all of our curriculum nights at the elementary schools. We need the same thing for board members so the parents can come talk to us in person if for some strange chance those emails are not getting answered. So yes, I think transparency is key. We are not seeing it now, and I would press for it and hope for it in the future.
Thanks, Becky. Short and sweet. Yep. All right.
Everyone else already said it.
Okay, we saved the best question for last. You ladies will have 3 minutes to answer this question. The question is, why should we vote for you? And please tell us what you think is at stake. I think, Susie, we started with you the last time.
I don't remember.
Yeah, so Julie, you're up next. Sorry. Julie, you're up.
Okay, the board role, I think, is the first thing and foremost thing you need to keep in mind when you head to the ballot or take your early voting or however you vote. Think about what the board role does and what the board role is steeped in. And it's a role that is responsible for multiple budgets of millions and millions of dollars, new types of funding that never existed before, with new types of criteria attached to that funding, HR direction and authority everywhere you turn, our greatest asset are our staff and our teachers, and being able to work with and figure out all the elements from hire to retire of what is the biggest part of our budget, and policies and administrivia, a lot of administration for an unpaid role. essentially. And so those are the things that a board is primarily responsible for. I think it was Susie, you that said that the world is changing faster than we've ever seen before, and we all feel it, we all see it in our professional lives and our personal lives. This is not a time to have the same people hoping for the same outcomes with the same tactics that we've used for decades. There's too much that is different in today's world to be doing that and relying on that strategy. It's also not a time for well-intended mama bears that don't have the experience or the interest in board types of administration and activities, and are more concerned for operational or management level activities, that there's a different way to get involved there. And those are different skill sets for different folks that hope to impact our children and really help bring them along. And it's a time to help support teachers. We all want to support teachers. We recognize that they're key to our kids' learning, and the concerns that teachers have involve very complicated issues like their pensions and pension funding, when pension liabilities are completely unfunded or largely unfunded in today's world, for our teachers and for our own selves in our commercial environments, for development and reward structures that help recognize and acknowledge good and successful teachers. Those are not easy things to do. For union concerns and for making sure that contracts are fair and that we also are able to work within the guidelines of contracts and work with teachers that are tenured and untenured in appropriate ways so that our kids are getting the best quality teaching education possible. And just supporting and bringing resources to our district in the new normal. As I said, I've attended sessions over the summer in ESSER funding, and all this government funding is being dumped into our districts and in our areas, and understanding what's required by that funding and how we can allocate and use that funding is a whole new area. Each and every time some additional pot of monies is available, and having the aptitude and the desire to dive into the details of those types of things which are foundational to our district. Those are the skills that I bring to the board, and that's why I'm running.
So first, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out or logging in online, taking part of your last beautiful Sunday to sit here and listen to us talk. While we might agree or disagree on the topics or the solutions, I think it's best for people to hear directly from candidates instead of conjecture on social media and things like that. So I thank you for taking the time to listen. I'm glad our community will have choices in November. There's a lot at stake with the November election. Many people think the biggest decisions voters will make are for the governor, or maybe the Secretary of State or the Attorney General. I think the most important decision voters will make are for the local races, positions like county commissioners and school boards. These are the positions and roles who are closest to the communities that they're going to serve, and therefore influence the policies that impact all of us the most. Issues surrounding schools and where we go from here are complex. You should vote for me because there are very few people I can think of who have been more involved in a combination of the schools and the community for the last 8 years. Besides the current Board of Education itself, there isn't a person who has been to more board meetings or who has heard from and shared more concerns from the community than me. There isn't a person who has asked as many questions and dug into as many documents and procedures as I have. I have spent the time and I have dug in and done the hard work so that our community can be informed, our teachers can be supported, and our students can attend school in person and have access to the best educational resources possible. Vote for me so that I can be your voice and work to improve trust, transparency, and accountability in Walled Lake schools.
So board members are a team. They have to work together to accomplish a common goal. And I know how to be a team player. I know how to work with other people to be able to get things done. I promise to work tirelessly to improve the Walled Lake Consolidated schools. Now, I don't promise to know it all because I don't, but I do promise that when I don't know something, that I will work hard to do the research necessary to find the right solutions. And I promise to listen to parents and to be transparent with them and with the entire community. I will seek to raise the bar, and in so doing, I believe that we will see our district make changes in a positive direction. If we don't make some changes at the ballot box this November, we will continue down this path of declining literacy rates, declining math scores, declining enrollment, etc. So we must change this trajectory. We must have some academic accountability. And not only do we need accountability with the educational aspect, but we also need to be held fiscally responsible. And so we have to operate within our means and manage our money more wisely. So if elected to the board, I will make addressing these issues a priority. So if you want to see better literacy rates, better math scores, fiscal responsibility, then I would ask for your vote in November.
As I said before, I am a parent of 2 young children in the district. My children will be here for the next 14 years. And yes, that perhaps makes me a mama bear, but I think that's okay because I am committed to this district. When culture wars and hot topics no longer become of interest to everyone, I will still be here fighting for not just my children, but everyone's children in the whole district. I didn't get to mention to you this all before, but my history with public schools runs very deep. I didn't just attend public schools as a child, I was actively involved. I regularly attended PTA meetings and boarding meetings with my family. I spoke at my first board meeting when I was 9 years old. And I've been that child that has fallen through the cracks because of underfunding and bad policies. I've heard the laments and the worries of teachers who are overworked and underpaid and underappreciated from teacher friends all over the county and the country. So I can look at a school board and its many facets from several points of view all at one time. And while I may not have the best budget experience, I believe I bring a sense of heart, soul, helpfulness, and community to a board. I'm running for school board because I feel it needs representation from younger community members, someone who actually have children in the district, and one that truly supports public schools. Someone that makes policy based on both data and empathy and shows they care for all the students and staff in the district. So I hope you will vote for me.
I'm Susie Musbeck-Crafton, and I'm asking for your vote either before November 8th or on November 8th. I didn't get to share earlier that I have a master's in higher ed administration, and I've worked in the education systems for the last 20 years. This is what I do as my profession. I help people in school districts across the country close achievement gaps, create operational efficiency, spend their money wisely. The skill set I bring to this is I'm a professional fundraiser, so I'm actually very clear how different pots of money have to be spent on different things. Fiscal accountability and transparency is what I do in my day job. We'd like to call it 40 hours a week. It's probably more than that. But my professional background is in K-12 education. I'm also the daughter of a 50-year public educator. My sister is an assistant principal at a high school. My poor husband gets to hear about what happens at schools all day, every day, because this is what we talk about with our family. We're also really privileged in our house and in our family to have a really diverse set of family members. So I've seen really high academic performance. I watched my sister-in-law struggle to get adequate services for my niece with Down syndrome. We got mental health stuff going on in the family. It's the diversity of experience in parenting and in raising children right now is making the access to schools really difficult. I'm running for the school board to make the access and the understanding of the incredible services that we have in our district and in our community more accessible to families. I'm also really, so I knew I was gonna run for school board someday. I just didn't know when. And when we realized that we were gonna have a new superintendent and we are coming out of needing to pick up academic loss during the COVID years and the culture wars that have been happening at the school board table for the past couple months, I decided this was the year. So if you're worried about that, vote for me. Susie Musbeck Crafton. Thanks.
Thanks, Susie. Thanks, ladies, you did a wonderful job. You made it. So I know a lot of you have some questions, again, just due to timing. The way we set it up is for the next half hour, maybe 30-35 minutes. There'll be some networking. You can approach the candidates. You can ask them any questions that you'd like. Get to know the candidates. So just as a reminder, there are 3 open board seats in Walled Lake, and there are 7 candidates vying for those 3 seats. 2 of them are current sitting board members, and the other 5 you see here. There will be another candidate forum Wednesday, October 19th. That one's gonna dive into operations and budget, so look for the information. We'll send more info out on that soon. Anything else?